Nice to see so many people here for the last panel. Since we're this huge crowd, let's do a quick poll. How many of you are a game developer? Give me a raise of hands. Okay, great. And then publisher? Great. And then, party, what's it called? Not a party provider, but a third party service provider. Party provider. I like that. Yeah. None. Okay, great. Oh, well, I mean, our team, that's match made right there. Okay, cool. Yes. So before the panelists introduce themselves, you're here to listen to more talk about influencer marketing. I just want to throw a couple of stats out there. According to Adweek and Blog Loving, 67% of marketers think that influencer marketing campaigns help them reach a more targeted audience, thus leading to more impactful results. So the folks who are questioning if it works, yes, it does. And then there's also this like, oh, it's a small little thing, but it's actually estimated to be worth $2 billion as a market in 2017 and set to reach $10 billion by 2020, according to Adweek. So hopefully we can talk about influencer marketing in a way that's beneficial for everyone. And we're also open to questions, so we don't have to wait until the end. If you have a question, please raise your hand and we'll get a mic to you. And now, please, panelists, introduce yourselves.
Did you do that?
No, I didn't yet. So yes, please, yes.
Hey, I'm Olesja Marjalaakso from Polkadot Studio. Polkadot Studio is a Finnish gaming company, and the idea behind the company is that most studios are full of guys making games for guys. So we are full of girls making games for girls, or women. So that's me.
Hi, I'm Roman Schneider. I represent the indie developers here. My studio is Genius, and we have an origin from a community, so we dealt with a lot of micro-influencers and in-game players who want to be influencers. And yeah, I'm a bit critical, so that's the position I'll be having here.
Hi, my name is Veera, and I'm from Traplight from Tampere. And we have one game out called Big Bang Racing, which I did the influencer campaigns for. And now we're working on 2 new games, and I'm excited to kind of be part of developing games that are actually YouTubeable from the get-go. So that's my kind of point of view here.
Great, and we've been hearing great presentation along the day, so thanks for that. For the first question or topic I have in mind, I kind of want to talk about why should you work with influencers? What's in it for the game studio side, but then also for the game studio? I think maybe, Olesja, you could have something interesting to say about the Russian market especially.
Yeah, so we are quite young game studio, and we are launching our first game. We're doing a big soft launch in Russia. And together with Russia's biggest lifestyle YouTube influencer. And for us, I see it like being an indie developer, we couldn't, for us, I kind of consider her our publisher, because she will bring with her the mass that we need to test the game, to make the game ready for global launch. And so, yep, I think that's like, yeah, for her, it's kind of interesting because she has a big following in Russia, but she's trying to build her outside of Russia community. So I think on that end, after we are exiting Russia and going out there, then we can kind of help her in that. So it's a very kind of true partnership with our influencer.
Right, maybe Veera.
What was the question
so
about?
Why work with influencers and what's the value with them? I know you're dying to talk about adding features for influencers, so I think you can take it there. Yeah.
So value for influencers, yes. Yeah, I think the value should come. There were some points in my presentation, but the value should come from the fact that you should understand what influencers actually do. They make entertainment for their fans. So if your game is not providing entertainment for their fans, it's probably not adding value to the YouTuber's channel or the influencer's channel. So they might do a video if you pay them enough, but it might not actually give them value. So the best case scenario is where the influencer also feels that this is a perfect match for my audience, because they don't care about anything else except the fact that their audience is entertained.
Mm-hmm. And how do you get to that point? Do you do like massive stalking online to understand what their audience is and if your game's a match? Like, how do you get to the point where you feel like there's a mutual beneficial relationship there?
I think the stalking is an excellent start.
Yeah.
I've done that a lot. I don't know how many thousands of hours I've spent on YouTube watching videos and trying to understand why are these fans so engaged with this content. So, trying to understand that from the influencers and their viewers' point of view, what is actually fun to watch. But yeah, then of course I would say that also like from the development point of view, like try to understand how can you make your game more YouTubeable. If you're making a match 3 game, then maybe you are not even looking to become YouTubeable. But if you have these elements like multiplayer or emergent fun, or that the game can be played for years, then you should consider like how to amplify that, how to feed from that.
Yeah, I'd love to hear your opinion, Roman, because you're the most critical here. Like, what would get you to pay for an influencer?
Well, to be honest, I mean, when you're working on your first game as an indie developer, this is not the top priority. I mean, you're running after funding, you're running after publishers. In your head, you think that they will basically take care of that when you find them. And without them to do it, it's super difficult and super expensive. And what would make me basically go for influencers at this stage? The influencers that you talked about, probably nothing, because the cost would be too high, because all the users that we need are users to pretty much test and soft launch, and for that Facebook is absolutely fine, and everything else involves too much diversion of focus. On the other hand, there are exceptions to that when we're talking about, let's say, communities of gamers that you can get access to that actually play similar games to you, so exactly the opposite of what you would do with big influencers. So try to find a few people who do and love the stuff that you are doing and get them engaged for free, and this gives you valuable feedback. That's what I would do. The rest is very hard at that stage, and I always think it's better to postpone. But I mean, maybe you tell me otherwise, and I should invest into that.
I think that sounds exactly like you need to do the thousands of hours of YouTube stalking. I know not all developers have time for that, but that's one of the ways to try to find those smaller influencers who will just fall in love with your game and play it for free, and their audience is exactly the niche audience that you need. But yeah, it requires time. So there's always this kind of like trying to balance between money and time. With time, you can build more deeper relationship with the influencers and try to find these like really perfect matches, even in the smaller influencers. But then again, with money, you can buy like a shotgun tactic, like huge influencers, and So there's a balance between.
Very interesting. I like the different viewpoints, but I'd like to actually know a little bit your thoughts on the different platforms and kind of the pros and cons of each. I think traditionally, when we talk about influencers, maybe like in the mass media, we think of Instagram right now because that's the hottest thing at the moment and growing like crazy. But then in gaming side, I think YouTube, especially on mobile, it's like 1 billion users and half of their viewers are on mobile anyway. There's 3 million gaming channels, so it's massive, right? But then you have Twitch on the other side, which is 140 million unique, but it's all gaming, right? So how do you think about those different platforms when you put your influencer strategy together? Yeah.
Well, we're just like beginning, and but how I see it, first of all, I make a life, like we're making a fashion game for women. So Twitch is out. Gaming YouTube is out. A 2D dress-up game is not very tubeable. I get it.
It might be.
Yeah. So, but still, I like the YouTube because there it's like the long tail is there. Like Instagram, I think will be the best fit for us because our game actually looks like Instagram. So it's there. But of course, on Instagram, the link and everything, it kind of goes away. So there's no linking. But those are what we are testing with at the moment.
So does it come down to like finding your target group, finding the audience?
I think definitely.
Yeah.
Like you should understand where your audience is. Like you have understood that maybe Twitch is not for you with the 2D dress-up game, but maybe go towards the lifestyle audience in general who maybe don't even play games yet, but they would love your game. So I think it's just understanding. And if you're making a really hardcore competitive mobile game, then Twitch might be for you, even though it's not traditionally that much of a mobile platform. But yeah, I would say that for mobile, it seems like YouTube is mobile gaming. YouTube seems to be the number one, but maybe I don't know, Romain, maybe you have a different opinion.
Well, in my case, what I see, YouTube is the go-to. Even when I'm looking at communities and what type of content they produce, they mainly use YouTube for it because it's easier and they have a shot at making money and they understand it. But to be honest, I'm also looking at other things like, for example, chat messaging platforms, which is a very important channel for me, and that's what I'm using to get access to those who have a lot of friends there, a lot of groupings, and those groupings then actually have YouTubers among themselves. So my first go-to is the chats.
Interesting. And then what about when you look at the mix between kind of the huge, there's like, I think there's 81 YouTube channels that have over 10 million followers. So that's like the ninja folks, right? Then you have the kind of mid-size, and then you have the small and micro. How do you decide how to allocate your influencer marketing resources?
I think for many developers, it just comes down to the fact that they cannot afford above a certain threshold, which is, of course, a reality for many. But if you have the budget, I would even still try to be as varied as possible. So vary between the bigger and the medium and the small ones, and then also with the organic, the type of influencers that you build a relationship with and you kind of invite to your office, and you actually, they are your fans above all, but also influencers, and then with the ones that you just kind of create a marketing campaign with. So I would go for the very varied one if you have the opportunity. But if you don't have, then from my point of view, we saw that going for the more close relationship in the beginning, when you don't necessarily have your studio doesn't have a name that everyone recognizes, so you cannot get people to like instantly jump aboard. So like maybe inviting people to your office and trying to build a relationship and get from there. So then you will probably have to make do with like smaller influencers, but you can still make an impact. So I guess it's about resources, and then if you have a lot of resources, varying.
I think that's a good, in Finnish we say donkey bridge, which means segue into money, something that we all care about very much. How much do influencers cost? I'm not going to answer for you. I'm grilling you now. What is your setup? Can you talk about it?
Yeah, sure. Our setup is probably a bit different because, like, being an indie game developer, and we don't have a huge amount of downloads, so we actually. For us, that's why we are actually soft launching in Russia. Many are asking, why the heck are you doing that in Russia? But actually, well, fashion in Russia, women go together. But through our investor and advisor, Peter Westerbacka, we got access to this biggest lifestyle influencer in Russia with 6 million subscribers on YouTube and 4 million on Instagram. And Peter has worked with her in Rovio, so he has known her for 5 years. And he just sent her a message that there's a cool game, let's meet. We flew to Moscow. We met them and shake hands, and we don't pay anything in advance because we can't afford to. So we are giving her a small revenue share out of Russian possible revenue on our game. So that's our deal. And because we are only working with one, and it's a kind of a big and a shotgun approach, and also we are like integrating her pretty deeply into our game.
Please,
I think the revenue share, actually, it's not that uncommon. I think it's becoming more common. I've heard of many studios who are doing that, and also even giving like shares of the company and stuff like that. So there's many ways to kind of engage the influencers monetarily. But when it comes to like how much they actually cost, I said this already before the panel when we were discussing, like it depends. Like it can go from 0 to million and anything between, or even above. So it really depends on who you're working with, what are your goals for the campaign, and if you have put more effort into having a YouTubeable game, or inherently more YouTubeable game than not, then that might actually lower your CPIs and overall cost of the campaign if the influencers are they really love the game and they know that it will be fun on a video, so they might be like willing to do it for less money or even for free.
And versus, like, as I said, our game is maybe not very YouTubeable, but we have tried to do it as interesting and is as engaging to our YouTuber and her fans as possible. So our game has live events of 2 weeks or 1 week or whatever, but so in those events you do the fashion challenges, you have a special item shop, and that's how you work. So what we plan to do with the influencer is that she will have her own live events with her own unique items in the shop. She will be actually, she will wear the items on the video that then players can earn during the event, and the event challenges, the daily challenges will follow her life. So we're doing a bit like Kim Kardashian Hollywood is doing, that even Kim Kardashian is going to Miami, the whole game is going to Miami, and you feel being part of that. So that's what we are going to creating this type of influencer and fan interaction in our game, so her fans can follow her life and get to know her better through our game. And that's why we also like really looking forward to seeing will it also like raise her engagement levels, because what, if I understand correctly, engagement is the holy grail for influencers, because that's like directly affects how much they make money. So if we can help with that, that could be pretty cool.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that you're talking about. It sounds like this campaign that they're doing, it actually takes a lot of time and effort. But then again, the flip side of the coin is the fact that you might get more beneficial results. So yeah, I don't know how many have actually calculated the return on investment in these kind of campaigns that you just, you know, pay the agent and some video is done, versus this type of more engaging that actually require more effort from the developer. But I would like bet my hat on the fact that the more engaging campaigns will have better results in the long run.
Yeah, those are very, very interesting viewpoints. I think maybe there's kind of one thing to talk about when we're in the ROI field is how can you drive down the CPI through within influencer campaigns? Can you help with your own, you know, as a studio, probably have your social channels and so forth? Is there measures that you can done to bring down the cost?
Well, I would say like have a YouTubeable game.
Yeah. I think we've heard that today.
Yeah. You don't have to pay an influencer so much if they love the game and it's fun for the audience. So I would just as a developer try to understand the viewer's point of view. Like if you as a developer want to make a YouTubeable game but you have never followed a game influencer and watched their videos and enjoyed that content, then you might be in trouble with what you're trying to do, because you really don't understand what the viewers want to see and what is fun on a video. So that would be my first go-to like tip, that actually start watching those fun YouTube gaming videos.
Great. Roman, I have a question for you. I think you have experience working with influencers, but from a different angle, not just the YouTubers and the you know, the social influencers, but influencers within game communities. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I mean, a big thing of what we did, and actually why we exist, is that we had access to communities from the very beginning. So our origin story is that I was a gamer with a lot of communities around me, played games, went to the top teams and changed the games from within, and they loved it, and that resulted into well, them wanting more of it and me getting the opportunity to get funded by them and making a game. And at the same time, it also put the pressure on keeping that community during 3 years of development, and at the same time getting more people in. So what I've been spending a lot of time in is to find other communities of gamers, and especially the top competitive ones, because that's relevant for what we are doing, because our focus is on mid or even core mobile gaming for a little bit older audiences with limited time, but who want a full experience. So the search was basically finding those. And what I did is I was going into different games and trying to get into those communities, and then meeting the alliance leaders. And with them usually comes a huge group of people. And these people actually migrate from game to game, and they have their own staff. They have their logo designers, they have their content providers who do the YouTube videos, they have the posts on the forums, and if you can get into those groups and they trust you, you immediately have access to a lot of potential influencer potential. It's very different from what's traditionally done, but it's a powerful tool, and it helped us, I mean, raise 1.5 million euros, for example, which is no small feat.
Yeah, that's a kind of cool twist on the influencer marketing side. There's kind of one question that I kind of have lying somewhere here in the background. Hold on, it's coming out. How do you get the influencers to talk about your game? So let's say you do your targeting, you find the right folks. You want to talk with, let's say, these 10 influencers, be it in gaming communities or Instagram or YouTube. How do you reach them? How do you tell a story that they're interested to tell their audience?
Well, I'll start with mine, because here the solution is make them part of the thing. So as you do with your YouTuber, in our case, we get them into the development, get them into, keep the communication channels open, and really make them part of the game in a way. Without putting them in our case, it's just they see what's happening, they're part of testing, they become our friends, they see that developers are not behind the big brick wall hidden away and doing some random stuff. No, we show them what we do, we listen to them, get feedback, and then they reward us with bringing their friends in and saying, hey, this developer cares about us, it's worth investing my time and passion in there, and they might make a better game for me, and hopefully people like me.
I think that's an excellent point. Yeah, inviting the influencers as part of your development, it doesn't mean that if an influencer says that, yeah, I want this feature, then you have to do it, but kind of like try to understand from their point of view that if they want something in the game, or they say that I can't make fun content out of this yet, you need to make changes, then like really listen to their feedback and then make those changes, not exactly how they said it, but understand the meanings behind what they're asking for, and then create something that will fill their needs,
right,
even if it's something different.
How does that work at scale? Like, I can imagine it being fairly doable to have a ongoing conversation with, say, 5 to 10 influencers, but let's say you're working with 50 to 100 across different time zones. How do you scale that?
I don't know if that has to be scaled, because the influencers, if they're asking for features, their needs are usually very similar. So if you're targeting the audience of, you have a certain audience, then the influencers that have that audience will probably be pretty similar with each other, and they will probably have similar needs. So you don't need to get advice from each and every one of them, but like having at least those 5 to 10 guys or girls who will help you understand their needs better might be worth it. And then do the like more scale contacting them, and when you have the really good proposal, like, hey, we have this awesome thing that other influencers have already enjoyed, then maybe that will work.
Well, I would use a completely alternative way.
Okay.
Because if I had 300 influencers and access to them and would have to integrate them somehow, I'd make a competition out of it. So basically, I would rank them based on different tiers, depending on how much impact they have made in the game, and give them cooler stuff. And then they'll start competing amongst each other, and the most engaged will be the top 10, top 20, and the other ones will be then fueled by wanting to get in there to get that access. And this will ensure their involvement, while the top 20 will be involved more directly and have more access. That's what I would do.
Yeah, interesting. We have about 10 minutes left, so I just want to see if the audience has any questions. I think everyone's like waiting for beer. All right, I have more to go, don't worry. So there's kind of a question. So typically we find that there's influencers that you pay, but then at the same time you're trying to grow an organic community. Is there a risk that when you're paying influencer, it leads to greed within the community, that then all of a sudden everyone wants to get paid for content? What's your thoughts?
Well, I have a story on that, because I was playing Marvel Strike Force, and in that game they have quite a few YouTubers, who are partially paid by them and working for them. And in this case, they made a huge mistake by increasing the level cap to 65. That was the mistake. But the mistake was that on day one, suddenly somebody was level 65 without it being physically possible to purchase that much energy to get there. Obviously, this guy was singled out. It led to tons of forum posts, and it turned out he was a YouTube influencer working for them, and they gave him infinite energy so that he could basically see more of the game. And it was a disaster because people were really upset, and it had a huge negative impact.
Yeah. Vera, did you have any thoughts on the greed if you pay some of them?
Yeah, I mean, we've also encountered some of these smaller influencers, like they have 1,000 followers and they send you an email that, hey, I can play your game on my channel if you pay me like X amount. And you're like, okay, well, I mean, you can play our game, but, you know, we're not going to pay you, sorry. You know, but you can see that maybe the smaller influencers are getting really excited by the success of the bigger ones, and some might not understand their value, but in general, I think the influencers understand their value very well, and then it's up to developers to understand the value as well. Like both sides need to be educated enough to understand what they're actually bringing to the table,
right,
so that nobody is getting fooled. But yeah, there might be some greed, but I think it's getting weeded out by just, you know, the whole community, the creators, and everything around it is maturing. So yeah, I think it's not that big of a problem.
Okay, and then yes, of course.
Follow-up question. So the money is one thing, but how do you deal with a situation where you maybe have paid for a YouTuber, but they don't do what you want? So maybe they play the game, but they start getting negative, and so you're actually paying for something and you're not getting the response you want. I mean, how does that affect you?
Yeah, that's a really nasty situation to get into, because after that, of course, if you have a written contract, then you can always refer to that, but nobody wants that situation. So I would put a lot of effort into like picking the right influencers. The worst case scenario is that you just strike a deal with someone that has a lot of subscribers without really thinking if the person is a good fit for the game, or if they're reliable, or if their content is even fun, or if the audience matches your game and everything, and then suddenly you are in the situation. So yeah, I hope that nobody is stuck in that situation. If you do, then good luck. Try to survive. I would make a written contract, but if you're working with an organic influencer that you haven't paid, then obviously you don't have any contract. But then the case is also that you should just, any publicity is good at that point if you haven't paid about it. And sometimes some games even, I mean, some games wouldn't have succeeded without an influencer picking up the game and just trashing it on YouTube. I mean, if you want to check out 100 Feet Robot Golf, it's a horrible, horrible glitchy game that a big influencer just picked up. I would guess that the game wouldn't have sold anything in Steam, but after the video they sold a ton. But the video was just about trashing the game. So, it can be good sometimes if you haven't paid. If you have paid, have a contract, and then, work your way with the managers and everything to kind of fix the problem. But, it's a nasty situation to get into.
Actually, I could kind of also speak from experience, having worked on studio side before. With Vainglory, we had that situation, and we really tried to kind of revenge with love type of thing. So we had one of our organic community members get very toxic, and then we kind of asked our friendly ones to go post this stuff, and then I think it was Gibbs, and then we even posted this thing like, "Bye, Gibbs, we're gonna miss you. We had such great times." And then everyone kind of laughed it off, and then he was like, "Okay, fine," and then he stopped being toxic. At least we got that to end. So sometimes just like trying to sometimes a critic will kind of vocalize a lot of positive speaking as well. So but then again, you don't want to put too much attention on the negative one either. So you kind of have to be delicate, and it depends on how big of an influencer they are.
Understand if the person who is talking or trashing your game is actually a hardcore fan, or just somebody making it for fun. Because if it's a hardcore fan, you should really listen and understand why are they so upset. Why are they trashing your game on a video in front of their audience? if they're a super fan. That's probably because it hurt their heart that you made a change in the game or something.
Yeah.
And that's a totally different situation from just a YouTuber like botching the video, like not remembering the game's name and that's a different case.
Sure.
Kind of shifting gear a little bit back, like how do you reach out to the influencers? Do you typically work through an agency? Do you find their managers, or do you have an introduction from Peter Westerbacka? Like what's the best way to get talking?
Well, yeah, for this case, it's just one intro, but I worked in my previous company also with influencers. It was just like, it was in Finland only, but then it's just like working and, as Veera said, finding the right people and trying to reach out to them. And actually, when like finding the right-sized influencers so that you can actually reach them, because it's like this, if you are a small company and nobody knows you, so there's no point to write even in Finland to the most like popular YouTuber in Finland, because she will never answer you. But then like finding those perfect, like I went like, and I kind of saw that what type of a subscriber amount the YouTuber should have for them to actually answer us, and kind of so I found a sweet spot for our game, and I contacted them, and we got 4 YouTubers interested, and they did videos, and we got results and stuff like that. So that worked.
Yeah, I think it's again a combination of many different, like if you want the big influencers, if you want to make a campaign with them, of course it's through an agent or agency, but then I think I have to give a shout out to Matchmade here, but I mean these type of platforms are really great for reaching the kind of a bit smaller influencers in scale. So that would be the job that would take you hundreds of hours of going through YouTube trying to find the perfect, the sweet spot, influencers, but you might want to use these kind of platforms as well, or services, but then I want to talk for the manual labor as well, because that can result in actually meeting the influencers and building a relationship, which is also very, very valuable.
From the indie perspective, I mean, who usually will not have enough staff to be able to invest those hours, and they will not have even community managers in place, or anybody who can really dedicate themselves. So it will come from very valuable CEOs, COO time, etc. Here, I would really recommend going with somebody like Matchmade. At least let them consult you and tell you what to do, and then you can decide for yourself. Because investing the time into figuring out how that works, this is wasted time, and you don't have the money and time for that, unless
we're happy to help with that.
Unless you have an introduction, of course, and a special case, and you know them. But if you're not from that field, don't waste time on doing stuff you're not good at.
You can pay us after the panel.
No, it's actually, well, it was 3 years ago, but the influencers that were founded in Finland, we actually didn't pay them anything, so it made it really simple, kind of, and it was worth the work at that point, because we couldn't have afforded to use you guys, even, so because we couldn't afford to pay anybody. But like trying to, at some point, figure out if I could do the work on like a global scale, and I very soon found out, well, no way. There's no time or energy anywhere that I would do that.
The final closing ceremony and the announcements of the Big Indie Pitch final will be taking place in Track Ring 1 in about 3 minutes, so please join us.
We have 1 minute and 20 seconds left, so...
The voice of God.
Yeah, exactly. Was it Chris James himself?
It was Chris James himself, yeah.
Sorry, where were you?
And like, especially if you need to, like, if you work with a lot of influencers, if you try to figure out how to pay them. I've heard that was pretty interesting. How do you wire money $100 to somewhere in Midwest, or like, I wouldn't even imagine doing that.
Yeah. One last question before we have to run out to see Chris James. Can you give a good example of a company that you think is doing influencer marketing well, apart from Traplight and Podcast, obviously?
Let's take seriously. They use the lifestyle influencers, and kind of, it's a game that doesn't use gaming influencers, because they have a boring match 3 game, which is not very tubeable. So sorry, Reko. But you guys really definitely have nailed it. So.
And look at Space Ape. I mean, they have been making that topic big, and Jodie has been doing a tremendous job. So if you want to learn something, learn from them.
Vera, did you have a...
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm going to have a bit different answer. This is a company or a game that has not actually succeeded very well, but I think they tried something interesting. So in Twitch, this game called Immortal Redneck, they were very inventive with the Twitch integrations, and they made this, in their game, you're this redneck who is trying to kill a bunch of zombies and stuff. And usually in the game, if you play it like normal single-player game, you get these loot boxes every now and then. You find them and you find random weapons or upgrades or something. But they made a streamer version where you actually, instead of finding those loot boxes, your audience is constantly voting for what item out of 3 you're getting next. So basically it led to these situations that the influencer, the streamer gets a potato gun or loses all their money just for fun. So that was a really fun interaction with the stream and the fans who were watching. So even though the game wasn't a big success, I think that type of thing is something that I want to see more in the future.
Great. Thanks. Excellent answers. Thanks so much for the panelists. Thanks everyone for staying awake. Now there's Chris James and beer.
Well, thank you very much. And also thank you, Heini, for hosting.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. That was really good.